Lyn Sykes once said, it doesn't matter how good a farmer you are, how good a bottom line you have, if you run a chainsaw through it in the family court, you're screwed. She's a succession planner and joins me live now in the studio. Lyn, succession, it can be a bloody brutal sport, can't it? Does it always have to be so tough?
Leaves a trail of carnage.
So tell me about your journey with succession planning.
I came to the work by accident. I was working as a relationship counsellor and a young ag consultant came to a communications course I was running. He asked me to talk to his growers, and then his family were in high conflict and there'd been a dust up in the cattle yards, and he asked me would I run a family meeting for them, because every time they sat down to speak, it ended up in a high drama, and they thought they needed someone who was more bossy and more aggressive than all of those.
That was you.
And I got the job. Yes.
Tell me, obviously I guess the goal is trying to find something you can all agree on, which is not an easy job at all.
Yeah.
What is one of the most important factors influencing when it comes to negotiations?
I think it's probably important to explain that the part of the succession that I run is about getting the family to an agreed point, and for then their solicitors and accountants to work out how they're actually going to get to that point. That my expertise is not in getting them there. My expertise is in getting them to a point where they agree on where they want to be. I guess the difficulty is human beings are difficult. They're complicated. They're often irrational around family issues. They're very easily offended around family issues because for most of us, the family is a fairly sacred thing and a really important place to get it right. And I guess underlying all of that is that in this demographic, there's not a whole lot of families that are functional enough to have the sophisticated communication skills that you need to chart your course through this process.
What are some of the toughest times you've come up against when doing this?
Well, I think I don't have a background in agriculture, and I'm not a farming daughter-in-law, and so I think even though I've got plenty of baggage, it doesn't actually relate to succession planning. And so the work, because it wasn't personal to me, my job was to make it easier for the family. It wasn't actually all that tough. I guess the things that I felt sad about were the times when it was very clear that the owners of family business put the business before their family, and the reality for some people in a family to understand that there were things that were a whole lot more important than them and how that impacted on them going forward.
How important is it to strip some of that judgment away when you're having these conversations around the table?
Yeah, it's really difficult because my kids say, "Mum, you're sounding a bit judgy," which is obviously the terminology now.
In that tone?
Yeah, exactly that tone. I think that in a family setting, people don't actually have a huge understanding of how judgmental they might seem. I think people don't realise what a tender situation it is and how long those wounds actually stay with people. I can remember doing a family meeting and two brothers started to have a bit of a crossfire about something that happened on an irrigation channel. And I just had a bit of a funny feeling about them. And I said, "So, can I just stop you? Can you tell me when this happened?" And they said, I think it was 1964. This was, 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So stuff, because families try to keep on an even keel, a lot of things that need to be resolved remain unresolved. And so my aim was to create a safe environment for people to talk about that. And when you create that safe environment, they talk about all the things they want to get off their chest. So I often say it's like opening a can of worms, and people say to me, "Aren't you worried you're going to open a can of worms?" I say, "Well, I'm only the can opener, I didn't create the worms." And I remember someone saying to me once at the end of that conversation, "Well, people need to understand that worms left unattended turn into snakes." And I thought it was a really good analogy. I think we don't understand how important it is to resolve issues when they're small, because they come against us in all sorts of settings, but particularly in succession.
Lyn Sykes, that's such a good note to leave on. Thank you so much for your time today on Beef TV.
My absolute pleasure.